Hello, I'm Angela Saini. Welcome to The Food Chain, fuel for the hungry mind from the BBC World Service. We bring you the economic, science and culture behind what we eat and drink. This week we were in the mood for some company during dinner, so we invited our seasoned colleagues from Tech Tent to join us. We're debating the role of tech at the table, how it can change how we eat and what we eat. And in that spirit, I've cooked up a quiche that was invented by one of the world's most powerful computers. But what else do we have on the menu? Well, we hear from a tech addict as he tries to detach himself from his phone during dinner.
It's very sort of melodramatic to say that it was a horrible experience, but at the same time, I really enjoy having my phone.
And we find out whether a machine can be as creative as a chef.
So Watson actually understands the chemical compounds that are in each of these ingredients that it uses to create recipes, and it understands how people have responded to those compounds on a pleasantness spectrum.
That and more on this week's edition of The Food Chain. Now, like I said, we've invited Tech Tent over for dinner. Its presenter, Rory Cellan-Jones, who's also the BBC's technology correspondent, is with us in the studio. Hello, Rory.
Hello there. Very happy to be here.
Well, we'll be eating later, but we've asked you to work for your supper by getting you to take part in a small experiment. This week, you've been sharing photographs of your meals on social media. And this is a massive trend online. In some circles, it's known as food bragging. But first, let's have a listen to how it went.
So that's tuna steaks and mash and some vegetables, minted vegetable layers. And in a minute I'm going to take a picture of it. So now I am, to the great scepticism of my family, photographing my dinner. And there goes the picture. I think that'll do nicely.
It's all right, we're not laughing at you.
So I'm at a family lunch and I'm photographing my food and my family is laughing at me. But what's new? Here comes the main course photograph. Oh, 1, 2, 3, go.
It looks like there's a bunch of worms all over it.
Those are not worms, those are prawns. So I'm now just popping out the office to find something for my lunch. Nasty wet day, I need something warm. Hi, can I have a large wild mushroom and chestnut soup, please? So I've got my lunch. Yeah. I'm sitting next to a colleague. She's looking at me rather strangely. And I'm photographing my food. There we go. Nice picture.
And what do we have for lunch today?
I've got some soup. I've got a diet drink. I've got some crisps and some stuff. I'm pretty healthy looking.
Pretty healthy, but there'll be 100 billion calories in those crisps on that nut thing.
I don't want your advice, thank you.
Free unwanted advice, always available.
It's Curry Wednesday in the BBC canteen, so I can't resist it. Can I get the chicken curry to take away, please? And I will have the lamb shish, please. I'll fix menu with a lamb shish.
And I'll have they've bullied me into this. I will have the fixed menu as well with the mixed grill. Thank you.
So are you offended by me taking pictures of our meal?
Offended, no. Concerned for your sanity, yes.
That is so offensive.
Well, you've had a varied food week. Rory, you've got many thousands of followers on Twitter. We know what your colleagues and your family and your friends made of this, but what did they think?
Well, here's how it worked. I decided I was going to photograph every single meal I had and then put it on Instagram, which also automatically then appeared on Twitter. And very quickly, I had to start apologising. And I wasn't surprised, really. People found it pretty boring pretty quickly and couldn't work out why I was doing it. You know, was I boasting about my food, about my cooking skills? People are used to me actually putting one particular kind of food on social media. I've become a very keen baker in the last year, and various people have said to me before, if I see another picture of your sourdough loaf, I may have to unfollow you. I follow a lot of people who do put quite a few pictures of food up, and I think the point about it, and the thing I learned over the week, is you've got to make it a bit more interesting than just, you know, a straightforward top-down picture of your food.
You're a big social networker, and you know that people love sharing pictures of food online. Why do you think there was such a cold reception to you?
Well, I think it depends on how they see. I'm not. When I say there was a cold reception, there was who's to say? You know, maybe some people really enjoyed my pictures. Some of them got, you know, quite a lot of likes on Instagram, for example. But I think they put people in different categories. So there are. I've been finding out, a lot of top chefs on Instagram putting lots of food on. I'm looking right now at several top chefs who've put pictures of their dishes. I've got a friend's daughter who puts lots of pictures of her food up there, and I quite enjoy seeing it because it sometimes tells a picture about her life. So I think it's got to be woven into everything else you do. If it becomes... I mean, the trouble with my pictures were they began to overwhelm everything because I was doing breakfast, lunch and dinner every day, and I think that was too much.
There is, though, also, I wonder, a touch of narcissism about the idea of sharing your food with the world. One, assuming that everybody would want to see it, but also you're telling people something about yourself. Rory, do you think people get an image of you from what you eat?
Definitely. I think that's part of modern social media today. Is obviously you're projecting an image and you're crafting that image. That may not be the true you. So when you put your pictures online, the food you eat online, you don't want to be the sort of person that's eating, I don't know, 2 hamburgers and a bag of chips from a takeaway late at night. You want to be a different, more sophisticated person.
Well, to explore this some more, the big question of whether we should be bringing our tech to the table, we're joined by a food psychologist, Charles Spence from Oxford University in the UK. So, is there any research into how Rory, by bringing his technology to the table, would have changed his behaviour? Is that a common thing that you see?
So I guess it kind of depends on what kind of technology is in the vicinity of the dining table. If it's something like the television, which many people might switch on at meal times, then there's certainly research there showing that people will eat as much as 30% more food with the TV on than with the TV off, just because they're kind of distracted, so they don't really realise, kind of a mindless eating, they don't realise how much food's going into their mouths and end up eating more as a consequence. Certainly from kind of informal observation, when you see people, how sticky and how engaged people are with their mobile technologies, then you kind of think if the study were to be done, you could imagine almost it would be much worse to have your sort of mobile technology at the table than even the television is.
OK, but it's quite a new phenomenon, isn't it? This idea of taking pictures of your food and broadcasting it to the world. How do you think that process of sharing everything, these minute details of our life, how do you think that changes a person's psychology?
As we heard, one might think a little bit more carefully about the kind of food that one chooses to order and hence to eat and hence to photograph. I suppose normally we do eat with our eyes very much. So the fact that we're taking kind of a digital image of the food is still kind of playing to choosing something that's kind of visually appealing. So that's part of what's going on there.
Rory, is this something that you found then? You've already said that you did tend to eat more healthily. If you kept it up, would that have continued?
I think it would have... Well, it depends how disciplined one is going to be. You can make a decision, I will photograph absolutely everything that I consume. I've got a terrible confession here. I didn't photograph any of the alcohol I consumed with the meals because that might have taken quite a lot of pictures on some occasions.
There's also this issue here of how your diners feel about the fact that you have technology at the table, looking at smartphones. I just want to come here to a clip. It's an Australian technology journalist, Matt Dunn, who's a self-confessed tech addict. He was forced to give up tech at the table as part of an Oz-based initiative called Phone Free February. Here we have him explaining what he did.
For me, it was very rough. I struggled more than I thought. I got there and I didn't really know anybody, so I was using my phone as the safety blanket. So I'm looking on Facebook, nobody knows, this is weird. And then it got taken and I had to sort of sit there and for a few hours communicate with total strangers without the comfort of having technology. It was very traumatic. I couldn't Instagram it for one. That was a real drama in my life. I mean, it's very sort of melodramatic to say that it was a horrible experience, but at the same time, I really enjoy having my phone.
Is that how you felt, Rory? The other way?
Well, the modern smartphone is now an ever-present thing in a lot of our lives. From the moment we get up to the moment we go to sleep, certainly in my case, we have it with us. So it's probably actually very healthy to have set periods in the day, and those being meal times, when that is not the case, that you can, go cold turkey and focus on the food and on the social interaction.
Charles, is there an aspect of technology that can be positive? Can technology enhance our dining experience?
I think it most certainly can. And so far, we're sort of seeing it mostly with some of the kind of modernist chefs who are playing around with technology at the dinner table. I mean, maybe some of them are doing kind of two things at one. On the one hand, we see sort of Heston Blumenthal sort of banning people taking photographs at his tables. But at the same time, if you were to go to somewhere like the Fat Duck, you might get the Sound of the Sea seafood dish where the technology will be brought to the table, a little mobile music device playing the sounds of the sea from a seashell.
You were talking about the Fat Duck restaurant,
Yep.
which is run by a very big celebrity chef, Heston Blumenthal. Tell me more about that restaurant.
So that's one of the restaurants we're lucky enough to work with. So we've done research with Heston a few years ago in the Science Oxford Museum, where we had about 140 people eating oysters while we played the sounds of the sea with the seagulls and the waves crashing on the beach. We played restaurant cutlery noises, kind of the tinkling of cutlery, or we played the sound of farmyard chickens. And that oyster did taste significantly better with the sounds of the sea than anything else we could find to play to our audience.
There's one technology that you've worked on, but also Rory has tested out, the vibrating fork. Can you tell me more about that?
So if you look at a lot of the technology and human-computer interaction labs around the world, especially in Asia, they're coming out now with a lot of new technologies that are positioned squarely at the dinner table. How do you take that great technology and put it on the table to change the experience? What we're seeing so far, I think, is mostly things like that, say the vibrating fork called the Happy Fork. There are a number of variants of this, where when the fork has a bit of technology inside, and when it detects that you're bringing the fork too rapidly or too frequently to your mouth, it may vibrate your hand to give you a sort of a subtle message that maybe it's time to slow down, or don't you think you've had enough to eat?
Rory, you've tried this. You've used the vibrating fork. What did you think?
Well, this was one of the top gadgets launched at the Consumer Electronics Show, the annual Jamboree in Las Vegas. It was launched last year, I think. We all thought it was a bit of a joke. It was wonderfully televisual. You're there in a hall full of boring TV screens and rather sort of mundane gadgets, and here's this cute little fork. So everybody dived upon it, but nobody took it very seriously. But actually, I am seeing at that kind of event more and more technology connected with food in some way, but more about kind of putting your kitchen online and everything in it. So being able to, for instance, there's a set of scales now linked to a tablet computer whereby, you can know exactly how the recipe will work and exactly how much you're putting in. There are refrigerators that are being given an internet connection with recipes popping up.
The
or maybe
Internet of
suggestions.
Things.
Yeah, the Internet of Things is coming to the world of food.
Well, we have a clip here of Richard Saar, a Silicon Valley entrepreneur who... It sounds to me as though if there is a problem, Silicon Valley will come up with some kind of solution to it, even problems caused by technology in the first place. His app is called Dinner Time, and it allows parents to disable their kids' electronic devices during dinner time. Let's listen to Richard.
We're using technology to help parents bring the family to the dinner table, making it less stressful and less confrontational. As you see nowadays, kids have their mobile devices, their smartphone, they may be in their room doing their own stuff. But often, many parents find it pretty difficult for, to call their kids to the dinner table. So last summer, we launched an app. It's called Dinner Time Plus. It is a user-friendly app that parents can easily download. Parents just click a button. Instantly, remotely, on the kid's device, you will lock up the screen showing it's dinner time and display the amount of time remaining before the screen unlocks. Parents need help to keep up with technology changes, and this app provides another new tool for their parenting toolkit.
Charles, is it not ironic that we're resorting to an app to block the apps at dinner time?
Yes, user-friendly for who exactly? I can imagine that would cause more riots and disagreement than anything else, in fact.
Isn't that the problem? Is technology on top of technology? Should we not just be simplifying the dinner experience, go back to basics?
Oh, we can certainly do that. But at the same time, I think that some of that technology in our pockets is so amazing, sort of complex and wonderful, that if it can be repositioned, then we can actually deliver more enjoyable meal experiences that may help provide a sort of a nudge to move people towards healthier eating, say.
We've concentrated very much on the gadgets so far. I think what is really having a revolutionary effect is the software in terms of social networks. It's the fact that anyone, anywhere can share the dining experience. It used to be a very private thing. It's becoming far more of a public thing. Obviously, that has some bad aspects, but it also has very positive aspects. You discover all sorts of things. I've discovered lots of things about food, particularly about baking. You know, I've been asking for tips on Twitter about baking sourdough bread, and I've got fabulous tips. Just as I ask about how to make my computer work better, there'll be experts about that. So there are experts on baking, and it's a wonderfully social activity, cooking, and I think this technology has contributed to that.
Well, I'm glad you got something positive out of this experiment. I'm very, very glad about that. Charles Spence, thank you so much for joining us. Rory, please stay with us. We've got some food for you. We did promise you some. We'll come back to that later. You're listening to The Food Chain on the BBC World Service with me, Angela Saini. We've invited our colleagues from the show Tech Tent over for dinner on the strict instructions that they're on a diet of food and technology. We've already had some healthy debate on the etiquette of bringing tech to the dinner table, but now we're asking whether technology can help us make better food. In 2011, the international technology giant IBM entered a very unusual contestant on the American general knowledge quiz show Jeopardy! The name of this contestant was Watson, and it was one of the world's most powerful computers, or, as it's now known, a cognitive computing system. What that means is that it's designed to learn in a similar way that our brains learn. On Jeopardy! Watson was a hit. In fact, it beat 2 human contestants and pocketed $1 million. Since then, IBM has been trying to stretch what this machine can do, and their latest foray is into the world of cookery. I spoke to Steve Abrams, the director of IBM's Watson Group, to find out why a cognitive computer wants to enter the realm of food.
So once you decide you're going to tackle this question of creativity, the next question is, what's the domain? So why food? Food is universal. Everybody needs to eat. It's a critical part of our cultural and social fabric, and many people really love to cook. So the thought was, let's test this theory about creativity and building systems that support creativity in a domain that would be much more universal. And we settled on food.
What I think is very difficult for people to get their heads around is how you get data about flavours and tastes, which are such subjective things, and how do you translate that into something a computer can understand? So
we decided to teach Watson about cooking by giving it recipes to read. So that gave it the opportunity to learn what had been done before successfully. And we combined that with information about something called hedonic psychophysics.
You have to explain that.
Yeah, so hedonic psychophysics is the psychology of what people find pleasant and unpleasant. So Watson actually understands the chemical compounds that are in each of these ingredients that it uses to create recipes, and it understands how people have responded to those compounds on a pleasantness spectrum based on some research that's been previously done. Now, the unique thing that Watson was able to do is read a tremendous amount of existing recipes. The earliest versions of the technology were developed in conjunction with our partners at the Institute of Culinary Education. We called upon their chefs and got help from them on understanding the creative process that chefs go through, and that really shaped our early thinking about what Chef Watson should do.
So from that collaboration, you moved on to your next stage, which was an online forum.
Yes, we decided we wanted to bring the Chef Watson technology to the public, and for that we searched for a consumer partner. Bon Appetit is a major food publication in the U.S. with a web presence, and we partnered with them to produce Chef Watson with Bon Appetit, which is a version that anybody can sign up for and try out at ibmchefwatson.com.
Right. Okay. So with this website, you teamed up together. You plugged in loads of recipes, and then what happened?
Yeah. So Watson learned really 3 different things by reading Bon Appetit's database of recipes. The first thing that it learned is what are some common ingredient pairings. So what are things that have been used together in recipes? So it might have learned that peanut butter and chocolate are frequently used together, for example, or carrots and onions and garlic are frequently used together. The second thing is what I think of as the stylistic correlations. So what ingredients are commonly used in what cuisines? So, for example, it might have learned that Italian food often includes maybe Pecorino Romano cheese, or typically is veal is a common ingredient, or mascarpone. And then the third thing that it's learned is really what is it that is the fundamental essence of any given dish. So if you think about something like pizza, when I say pizza, you've conjured up an image of your mind that's some kind of dough and some kind of cheese and vegetables on top, and that's completely different than what you've conjured up if I say a burger.
That was Steve Abrams from IBM. As you mentioned there, Watson's first cooking collaboration was with chefs from the Institute of Culinary Education in New York. Well, to find out if chef and computer prove a good kitchen pairing, I spoke to one of them, Michael Laskonis.
One of the first exercises that I engaged with was something we call a Vietnamese apple kebab, which I know sounds bizarre on the surface. But we almost intentionally, to both challenge the system and to challenge ourselves, we would almost pick these criteria almost at random.
Now this is a recipe that doesn't exist, I'm assuming. I've never heard of Vietnamese apple kebabs before.
And that's where the beauty lies, because we can approach a new dish from thin air like this. So what we do when we work with the system is we enter those 3 initial prompts, and what the system does in a matter of seconds is it analyzes its database of thousands and thousands of recipes, cultural data on food, as well as the makeup, the chemical makeup of hundreds of ingredients. It kind of crunches all that together, and what the system would give us back is an output, or several hundred outputs, of simply just lists of ingredients. And then from there, we can sift through those lists of ingredients and find something that sounds appealing or offers a certain amount of surprise.
Okay, so then you're quite heavily involved in this. It's not as though Watson spits out a recipe and you just cook it. There's many different choices for you.
It is still very much a collaboration between man and machine. To a very limited extent, we can teach a computer how to taste.
What kind of things has Watson suggested that you've just thought that is not going to work?
Well, sometimes it's just 1 or 2 ingredients. That, for instance, I've done pastry exercises where we would maybe hope for butter. Watson would suggest margarine, which wouldn't be as appealing from a flavor standpoint.
But it's not as smart as you'd expect.
But
then.
it's learning. It's learning over time. I mean, the database is expanding, and it's offering a variety of options to us. And what comes out of these exercises on a personal level is now I think differently. When I consider a new dish or a new ingredient, it's already gotten me thinking a little bit further ahead and maybe be more willing to include other flavor pairings where I hadn't before.
Is this the future of food then, that we won't need chefs anymore? We'll have computers doing our recipes for us?
No, I certainly don't think the human element will ever be removed from the equation. We like to say that the computer can't flip an omelet yet. And that's very true, but also this is just really just one other tool that a cook can have in their kitchen. All great advances in cooking have really been the result of technological advances, better ovens, better knives, more efficient ways of doing things. And this is just one more tool, just a very broad and expansive tool with a lot of data that, no one cook could ever really hold in their head. And beyond just being sort of a search engine, the way that Watson processes that information, can result in these interesting creative results.
Michael Laskonis there. Now, you're probably wondering what Chef Watson's recipes taste like. Well, I've whipped one up and I've brought it into the studio. We're joined today by Rory Kethlen-Jones from Tech Tent, our dinner guest for the week, and I did promise him a meal, so he's about to try it. Rory? Mm-hmm. Okay, you chew there. It's a Thai quiche. Think about that. Think about the flavours. I want to know what you make of it. While you get it stuck in, I have some comments from our listeners. We reached out to you this week to find out your thoughts on technology at the dinner table. Is it appropriate to use your phone during dinner? Well, we had a great response. Steve Jones said, "It is rude," a comment echoed by many others, including Francis Briggs, who also commented that no phone call is that important ever. Hill Newmain, though, justified tech at the table with a single word: multitasking. Well, multitasking here is Rory from Tech Tent. What do you make of Chef Watson's Thai quiche, Rory?
Yeah, well, it looks at first glance like a pretty standard quiche. I'm not that keen. It's got some sort of spice in it.
It does. So it's got the traditional ingredients that you would find in a quiche. It's got Gruyere and eggs.
Has it got I don't know, not lemongrass, but some vaguely Thai.
It has got lemongrass.
Oh,
yes.
Lemongrass.
There is curry powder in there.
Yeah. I'm not liking it. I'm sure you're a better chef than Watson is, and
well,
you were actually just following instructions. But I'm not convinced that Watson has got it right here.
You have managed to demolish quite a lot of it, though.
Well, I've been doing my duty. You asked me to eat something, it's only polite.
OK, and on that note, we end this week's edition of The Food Chain. Rory, I hope you enjoyed joining us for dinner.
I must come again sometime. It's delicious.
Well, we certainly enjoyed having you here. Thank you to all the listeners as well who've shared their perspective this week. If you have any more thoughts on technology at the table, then please do tweet us at BBC World Service or with the hashtag BBC Food Chain, or get in touch on Facebook through the website bbcworldservice.com. Next week, we're asking whether governments should pay for our food. Do join us then.